Hi, I'm Marisol. I spent 8 years saving my family's company from collapse, only to be cut out of the legacy I built. At my father's birthday dinner, they announced my brother as the new CEO, and I was just expected to smile. But that wasn't the worst part. The betrayal had started long before the applause. Hidden meetings, forged documents, a mother who paid off board members. How do you fight back when the people burning you down are the ones who raised you? Let's talk about it. The napkins were folded into perfect triangles, Mom's signature touch when she wanted things to look polished, curated, controlled. It was the first red flag. I stood near the bar of the private dining room at Langston's, watching the staff light votive candles in a circle around a 3-tiered cake. My father, Harlan Danner, was turning 65. I had picked the venue, the menu, the guest list. The centerpieces were calla lilies, his favorite, though he never remembered that I was the one who always brought them to the house after Mom's surgeries. The room buzzed with polite laughter and light piano music. Old business partners, distant cousins, and board members filled their wine glasses and whispered behind napkins. Brooks was already seated at the head of the table like he owned the room, laughing too loudly and adjusting his cufflinks like a game show host. I should have walked out then. I had told myself this was just a party, nothing more. But somewhere in my chest, something was tightening. My gut never lied. It just whispered. When the applause quieted and the lights dimmed slightly, Dad stood, tapping his glass with a butter knife. The room silenced with obedient speed. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he began, smiling with the softness he reserved for public moments. "It's been a good life, a hard-fought one. And tonight's not just about me, it's about the future of the company." There it was. He paused dramatically, letting the silence stretch just long enough for the weight to land. "As of next quarter, full ownership of Danner Holdings will officially transfer to my son, Brooks Danner." Applause erupted before the words even settled. I didn't move. I felt the ground slide beneath me, though I hadn't left my heels. A slow roar echoed in my head, but I didn't flinch. Just stared across the table at my brother, whose smug grin carved across his face like it had been waiting years to come out. My father raised his glass toward Brooks. "He's earned it, and he'll carry on what I started." No mention of me, no acknowledgement that for the last 8 years, I'd been the one managing the company through international tariffs, supply chain meltdowns, and a near-bankruptcy scandal. No nod to the nights I slept under my desk, or the 3 birthdays I missed because I was in Tokyo renegotiating contracts to keep our doors open. Just Brooks. Just his name. Just his future. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. When the applause died down, I stood slowly. Every eye turned toward me. I looked at my father. "You said we'd co-lead." Dad's smile faltered, just a flicker. "Marisol, the company has always passed from father to son." "And daughters don't count?" Mom's voice slid in then, smooth and syrupy. "Sweetheart, don't make this about gender. You're very capable, but you know Brooks has always had the people skills." Brooks leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the backrest. "Your time's over, sis. It's not personal, it's just business." I wanted to laugh, or scream, or flip the table, but instead I looked around the room. Every face that had once thanked me for saving their legacy was now looking away, avoiding, discomfort wrapped in politeness. My chair scraped back across the floor. The sound was louder than I expected. It cut through the air like a threat. I didn't yell. "You all deserve each other," I said quietly, clearly. No one stopped me as I walked out. But something inside me didn't come with me. They think this is the end. But I've just learned how to begin. I didn't sleep that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't shut up. Just kept looping the same 30 seconds of clinking glasses, the word legacy, and Brooks grinning like he'd just won a reality show. By the time the sun rose, I hadn't moved from the kitchen counter. The coffee in front of me had gone cold an hour ago, but I still cupped it like it could warm something inside me. I wasn't just replaying the betrayal. I was tracing the patterns, the precision. They hadn't stumbled into that announcement. It had been choreographed. Something tugged at me, an unease not from the betrayal itself, but the efficiency of it. I reached for my bag and pulled out the leather-bound planner Dad had left in the back seat of my car weeks ago, a careless afterthought. There it was, a calendar entry from 6 weeks earlier. Meet with Charles transfer options. Charles was our family's estate attorney. I'd known him since I was in braces, but I hadn't been invited to that meeting. Of course I hadn't. I flipped further back. Another entry. Review succession doc second draft. That was 2 months ago. The pieces started rearranging in my mind, no longer random. The party wasn't a surprise celebration. It was a finale, for me. Weeks earlier, Mom had said, "You should take a break, honey. Let Brooks step in for a bit." I thought it was kindness. It was foreshadowing. And Brooks, he'd missed half the board meetings that quarter. When I asked, Mom brushed it off. "He's got a different leadership style, Marisol. You don't have to micromanage everything." They'd been setting the stage. For months. I opened Dad's old laptop, the one he'd left with me during a tech transition at the office. I wasn't supposed to have it anymore, but he never asked for it back. In the admin folder, tucked inside layers of clickbait files and spreadsheets, was a document named Succession Proposal, Confidential, dated 3 months ago. And just like that, the whole script made sense. My 8 years of rebuilding the company weren't a test or a prelude. They were the labor phase. I had been the recovery plan. Brooks was always meant to be the legacy. Over brunch the next day, I confronted Mom. She was slicing her toast into neat triangles, her voice as soft as her sweater set. "You knew," I said. She didn't flinch. "Knew what, sweetheart?" "About the transfer, about the speech, about all of it." She sighed, folded her napkin slowly, and looked me in the eye. "Sometimes a woman being too competent makes the men feel small. It's not fair, but it's true. And you're just so sharp. You don't leave room." I felt like I'd been slapped with silk. "I was never meant to be part of this," I said, not asking, just stating. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You were always the strong one. Brooks, he needs this more." The weight of that sentence settled over me like a wet sheet. I left before she could say anything else that sounded like love but felt like a blade. The texts started rolling in that evening, from cousins, board members, my godfather for Christ's sake. "Don't overreact. It's not as personal as it feels. Brooks needs this more than you do." They weren't trying to hurt me. They thought they were helping. That was the most infuriating part. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a story that had been written long before I walked on stage. 16 years ago, Brooks got a Porsche for his 16th birthday. I got a used laptop with a cracked screen. He wrecked his within a month. I still use mine for taxes. That memory hit me as I walked the town lake trail alone, earbuds in, but no music playing. Just static and the steady sound of my breath. My shoes crunched over gravel as the skyline of Austin glowed ahead, familiar but distant. They had written me out of the script. They just hadn't counted on me writing my own. The office was quiet. Too quiet for 6:30 on a Tuesday. No late calls, no clatter of printers, just the soft hum of overhead lights and the echo of my heels crossing the tile. I had stopped expecting that place to feel familiar, but I hadn't expected it to feel foreign either. Not like this. I sat in my glass-walled office, the city glowing behind me, and opened the month-end reports again, out of habit more than hope. And that's when I saw it. A wire transfer. $150,000, under my name, to a company I'd never heard of, filed under vendor renewal priority. Everything looked legitimate, except I hadn't signed off on it, but the system said I had. My hand went cold on the mouse. The digital signature matched mine. The timestamp was from last Thursday, when I was at a conference in Atlanta. I checked again and again. I wasn't imagining it. They weren't just pushing me out. They were setting me up. I grabbed my personal phone and called Lois Whitaker. She picked up on the first ring. "I was hoping you'd call," she said quietly. I skipped hello. "Can you get into the back-end system? I need to know who accessed my admin login." A pause. Then, "You're not going to like it." "Tell me anyway." IT logs were edited from the inside. Someone used a master credential to mask a secondary login, but the source IP? It's from the CFO's terminal. My jaw clenched. Brooks' latest hire, a former frat buddy who barely passed business law. This isn't negligence, Marisol, she added. It's a trap. You need to protect yourself. I already had. I'd been making private backups for weeks. Every doc, every approval trail, every out-of-place vendor invoice. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival. Still, hearing it out loud, it chilled me in places I didn't know could freeze. I ended the call, sat in the dim light, and opened an old external hard drive I hadn't touched since Dad handed me interim control. I remembered everything being so fragile back then. I used to sleep in the office 3 nights a week, not because I had to, because I didn't want to risk stepping away. As I scrolled through archived board communications, something caught my eye, an internal memo from 6 years ago, titled Q2 Retention Bonuses Executive Vote. I didn't remember this, but the names on the recipient list were familiar, 5 of the 7 board members from that vote. And the payout? Filtered through a charitable foundation, Jeanette's. I froze. Then I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. 6 years ago, Brooks was promoted to Executive VP after a 5-2 board vote. I was told he earned it because of his vision. That word again, vision. But it wasn't vision. It was wiring. I made 3 calls, quiet ones. One of the recipients had moved to Oregon, retired, and no longer had a stake. He confirmed it. Jeanette had approached them to ensure stability. He didn't see it as bribery. He called it a strategic thank you. I sat there in silence. The betrayal didn't begin at that dinner. It wasn't even this year. It had roots. It was engineered. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, I walked the hallway one more time, down past the framed photos. My grandfather standing in front of our first warehouse, Dad at a trade expo in Tokyo, and Brooks shaking hands with a partner from Germany. There was no photo of me, not even in the admin wing. They hadn't erased me by accident. They had never intended to keep me. I returned to my office, closed the door, and plugged in the encrypted drive. I uploaded every document, every email, every trace of what they'd done, and what they were still doing. I wasn't ready to go public, but I was done playing defense. If they wanted war, they should have come better armed. I didn't knock when I walked into my father's office. The door was half open, and I was tired of asking for permission in a building I kept afloat. He sat behind his desk, flipping through papers with a pair of glasses he only wore when pretending to read. I need 10 minutes, I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. He didn't look up. If it's about Brooks, it's not about Brooks. It's about theft. That got his attention. I handed him the packet I'd spent the night assembling, financial reports, log and metadata, altered trails, all pointing to a forgery, a false transfer from my credentials. Not a mistake, a setup. He skimmed the first page, then the second, slower now. His jaw tightened, but not in shock. In calculation. You can't bring this public, he said at last. You're serious. This would hurt the family. The name. Let's fix it quietly. I stared at him, stunned by the calm in his voice. Not even a flicker of defense for me, not even a, did you authorize this? Just damage control. You care more about the illusion of order than the reality of betrayal, I said. Even when it's staring at you on paper. We're a family, Marisol. No, we're a brand, and I'm bad for it now, right? He didn't answer. The silence cracked something I didn't even know was still whole. I left the documents on his desk and walked out before I could say anything worse, or anything true. By noon, my inbox was full of landmines. An anonymous email had started circulating. Subject line, concerned for her fitness to lead. It was vague enough to seem credible, smartly worded, full of passive concern. She seems overextended lately. Has anyone checked in on her mental health? Perhaps a sabbatical would help. I knew the voice behind it, the smug condescension hidden behind faux empathy. Brooks had always known how to smile while cutting you off at the knees. Within hours, vendors were reconfirming terms. One asked if we should postpone the renewal cycle until things stabilize. Another suggested it might be time to explore other distribution partners, just temporarily. They were testing the water, seeing if I'd bleed, and I did, just not publicly. At a networking brunch 2 days later, I felt it like a layer of film over every smile. People looked through me instead of at me. One woman, once warm, once a friend, said with a tight smile, "Hope you're getting the support you need. Emotionally. These transitions are so hard. I didn't correct her, didn't explain I wasn't the one transitioning. I just stirred my coffee and thought about how many times Brooks had done this before. 16 years ago, he told my college internship advisor that I'd plagiarized an application essay. It wasn't true. I'd written every word myself, but the seed was planted and the opportunity vanished. He said later it was a misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was escalation, and I wasn't 18 anymore. That night, I parked outside my parents' house. I didn't get out. I just watched the lights from the driveway, soft yellow coming through the kitchen window, the same glow I remembered from childhood dinners, birthday candles, late-night arguments I was told to forget. I had proof. I had strategy, but I didn't have them, and I never would. They were pretending I was unraveling, but I was the only one holding this together. I stared at the IP log on my screen. One number, one location, an access point traced back to Jules. Jules Whitman. The same woman who once loaned me her laptop for a final paper. Who cried with me over breakups, poured wine on rooftops, promised we'd always have each other's backs in the boys' club of business. I felt nothing now, just data, clean and damning. I texted her. She responded within 5 minutes. We met at a neutral cafe. Quiet, dim, overpriced. She smiled like nothing had happened. Her hair looked more styled than usual, like she'd made an effort for war. I was going to reach out, she said, brushing crumbs from her lap. Things got political. You know how this industry is. You used my name in an internal attack memo, I replied flatly. Her expression didn't flinch. Brooks approached me with an opportunity, PR restructure. It was a real shot, Marisol, not just freelance fluff. I leaned back. So selling me out was your audition? Her smile cracked, just slightly. I thought you'd understand. You always told me I was too scared to take up space. You didn't take space, I said. You took my spine and offered it up like a trophy. She looked down. It wasn't personal. But betrayal always is. Back at the office, I logged into our private drive. I needed the original documentation, the forged transfer, the file trails. My password failed. I tried the backup login. Nothing. The folder was gone. Everything I'd spent months cataloging vanished. I called Lois. It's gone, I said. The drive. Everything. There was a long silence. I checked the archive logs yesterday, she said. Your files were marked as obsolete and permanently cleared. Manual override. Who authorized it? Another pause. Your father. My stomach didn't twist. My heart didn't sink. It was worse than that. It was calm. Dead calm. I walked into Brooks's office unannounced. No knocking, no asking. He looked up from his phone, smug as ever. I thought you'd be in hiding by now, he said. You want a war? I set the printed ledger on his desk. Here's the forged transfer. Here's the metadata. And here, I pulled another sheet from my folder, is the original board vote pattern for your promotion, paid for by charity funds routed through Jeanette's foundation. He tried to laugh, but his throat caught. So what? He said. You going to the press? No, I replied. I'm going to the shareholders. Marisol, you wanted a show? You'll get one, with numbers. He stood, fists clenched. You're bluffing. I'm resigning, I said. Publicly, with proof. And if I'm going down, I'm not going alone. I walked out before he could speak. That night I drove to the lake, parked under the same oak tree I used to sit beneath during high school debates. I pulled a printed resignation letter from my bag, one I never planned to submit. Just writing it helped. Just seeing the words. I will no longer protect a legacy that feeds on silence. My phone buzzed. Legal counsel. We received your full packet. It's in review. And it's strong. I stared at the water, the reflection of city lights rippling like secrets trying to stay hidden. No more warnings, I whispered. Next move's not a threat. It's a promise. The call came at 8:03 a.m., just as I was walking out the door. A woman's voice, calm, practiced, detached, introduced herself as an agent from the IRS. Miss Danner, she said, we've flagged a discrepancy in your financial access trail related to an intercompany vendor transaction. We'd like to clarify a few items with you directly. And there it was. The trap Brooks had laid was no longer theoretical. It had teeth now. I didn't flinch. I took down her name, her callback number, thanked her for the courtesy, then hung up and sat very still. They think fear makes people fold. I sharpen with it. I pulled up my encrypted backup, sent it directly to my legal team with no fanfare, no notes, just a subject line. For review, urgent. Then I forwarded the same to my PR consultant, who had once handled a high-profile embezzlement case and knew exactly how to keep my name clean when mud started flying. By noon, the story had moved from private to public. Not about me yet, but about the company. 2 of our major clients had canceled contract renewals, supply chain failures, invoices unpaid, and Brooks, of course, nowhere to be found. Lois called me from her car. He gutted the logistics team last quarter, she said. Didn't even reallocate, just cut and prayed. I wasn't surprised. By 3 p.m., the headlines were live. Leadership crisis at Takeda Danner? Clients abandon Midwestern distributor amid allegations of internal misconduct. One even speculated on whether the daughter's silence is complicity. I almost laughed. Silence? I was screaming. They just hadn't listened yet. I stared at the headlines and whispered to myself, this is what rot looks like under light. By the end of the day, I had drafted a letter. Not a resignation, not yet. It was a declaration of rot, laced with proof. I wrote to the board, each member by name. I detailed the forged transfer, the missing backups, the voting irregularities, the cascading mismanagement, and the emerging legal exposure. I attached links, copies, notations. Clean, indisputable. My attorney called. Are you ready to file suit? Not yet, I said. Let them sweat, a bit longer. I ended the letter with one sentence. This is your final chance to choose integrity over comfort. The next morning, I printed 10 copies, hand-delivered each one, no assistance, no email. One by one, I dropped them off at desks, made eye contact with every board member still sitting in their plush seats, paid for by my work, and walked away. On my way out, I passed Brooks stepping out of his car. He wore mirrored sunglasses and a sport coat far too flashy for a weekday. He saw me, smiled. He had no idea. I didn't slow. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. He doesn't know it yet, but this was his last smile in power. The headline hit me like a punch to the chest. Child hospitalized after using Takeda Danner nebulizer. Faulty seal suspected. I didn't read it twice. I didn't need to. The damage was instant. I could practically hear the PR alarms going off across the city. Boardroom phones lighting up, legal teams scrambling to draft denials, Brooks's team rushing to frame the narrative before the facts got too loud. And still, I felt nothing. Except shame. Not for what happened, but for how predictable it had become. 2 hours later, a reporter called me. Her tone was friendly but pointed. Are you still affiliated with Takeda Danner? The family name is still in the legal registry, and people are asking whether you... No, I said. I haven't been affiliated for over a year. But you were CEO during... I was CEO when it was solvent, ethical, and safe. Ask someone else about what it's become. And then, there he was. Brooks, on camera. Smiling that diplomatic smile he only wore when he was lying through his teeth. We're handling this internally. The incident is under review. We take consumer safety very seriously. I clicked it off before he finished the sentence. That night, my phone rang. Hi, honey, Jeanette said like she was calling to talk about dinner plans. Listen, we need you. I didn't speak. You always had a better sense for these things. You kept the numbers clean, the staff in line. Brooks? Well, you know your brother. He's passionate. Silence. But just so we're clear, Brooks will remain CEO. We're not asking you to take over. Just stabilize things. I hung up. They wanted me to clean up their mess, again, but not to lead. They wanted the body without the voice, the brain without the name. They wanted me as insurance, not as legacy. The next morning, Harlan sent a message through his assistant. Your father would like to meet. No explanation, no apology, not even a direct call. I didn't respond. Lois did. Another exec walked, she said. And guess what? CFO's gone. Resigned quietly. That house is crumbling. I wasn't surprised, only relieved that I was no longer in it. I started making my own list. Not of revenge, not even of justice, just of what came next. A real company, new partnerships, something without my last name stamped across a rotting facade. Then the LinkedIn message came. If you ever go solo, I'd follow you in a heartbeat. Your leadership was the only reason I stayed as long as I did. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Later that day, I sat across from Lois at a quiet cafe in Clarksville, the kind of place that served lavender tea and too many gluten-free options. But it was calm. It let me breathe. As we talked, a new headline lit up my phone. Takeda Danner faces civil suit over faulty medical equipment. Lois glanced at it, then at me. You okay? She asked. I nodded, slow. I'm not here to clean up anymore, I said, not to her but to the universe. I'm here to replace what was never meant to hold. She smiled, quietly, as if she'd been waiting for me to say that. They rented a neutral room in a law firm downtown. Glass walls, cold chairs, a pitcher of lemon water sweating on the table like it was nervous for us all. I walked in last. Dad rose halfway, like muscle memory told him to act civil. Mom stood and tried to smile. Brooks didn't move. He just swirled the ice in his glass and stared straight ahead like this was a board meeting he didn't want to attend. I sat down across from them, adjusted my cuffs, and said nothing. You were always the smart one, Dad said, voice thin. We should have listened sooner. I kept my face still. Jeanette jumped in. Everyone's scared right now, but you've always had a steady hand. Brooks said nothing. His silence wasn't regret. It was survival. He didn't have a move left to play. We want you back, Dad said. I raised an eyebrow. He looked down. Not as CEO, just help us through this moment, publicly. Reassure the investors. You're the only one who can. So that was it. They didn't want me to lead. They wanted me to patch the hole in their sinking ship while Brooks kept his crown. Listening, I said softly, isn't the same as respecting. I stood. Jeanette opened her mouth, but I was already walking out the door. The next day it began. An official notice from the FDA, an investigation into product quality failures. The Takeda Danner name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Videos circulated of parents warning others. Headlines spun out faster than legal could contain them. Vendors pulled out. Board members resigned. And Brooks, dear invincible Brooks, was spotted selling off his watch collection online. He looked tired, not broke, not yet, but exposed. I didn't respond to messages from reporters or former clients. I didn't comment. I didn't gloat. I let the silence speak louder than I ever could. That week, I drove past the old Takeda Danner office building, shuttered, padlocked, weeds pushing up through the concrete. I pulled into the empty lot, parked for a moment, and just stared. 6 years ago, I walked into that building with a laptop, a plan, and a family legacy I thought was salvageable. Now it was a tombstone. I kept driving. The house I grew up in was listed for sale. A beige sign hung in the yard, faded red letters. Price reduced. The blinds in the kitchen window were crooked, like everything else, slightly off from what I remembered. Lois sent a text later that night, just 3 words. You saved yourself. That was the only legacy I needed. The following week, I stood in my new office, Morton International, 28th floor, windows that made the city look small. A junior analyst, nervous, fresh out of grad school, stood beside me after a strategy meeting. I heard you used to run a family business? I smiled. Briefly. I walked to the window, watching the sky turn gold over Austin. Below, the city moved forward like it always does, without apology, without pause. It didn't survive me, but I survived it. The last time he asked for anything, I said nothing. And that was my answer. It was late afternoon. The light poured into my office in that golden, deliberate way that only happens in early spring. My assistant stepped in with a clipboard and a hesitant look. There's an older man in the lobby. He says he's your father. I didn't look up right away. I kept my eyes on the window, on the skyline that had stopped feeling symbolic and just become mine. Tell him I'm in a meeting. She nodded, quiet, professional. She didn't ask twice. Hours later, I found the envelope at reception, cream-colored, my name written on the front in my father's handwriting, sharp, slanted, familiar. I carried it to my desk and set it down beside a contract I was preparing to sign with our Southeast Asia distribution partner. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The letter was short, a page and a half. He didn't beg, didn't defend, didn't even explain. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. Turns out I was the cause. I folded it carefully. No tears, no fire, just a steady sinking ache that didn't want to explode, only settle. I placed the letter in a drawer, not to hide it, just to stop it from sitting in plain sight. That night, I went home alone, lit a single candle on my balcony like I used to do in college when I needed clarity. The wind was soft. The city breathed below me, unaware or unconcerned. I wanted justice, I whispered to the dark, but I found distance, and maybe that's enough. I didn't feel healed. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt free, and that was better. The next morning, I stood in front of the executive board at Morton International, presenting a plan that would launch our company into 3 new markets across 2 continents. The room was quiet, focused. No one interrupted. No one questioned my credentials mid-sentence. It was the kind of silence I had never known in my old world, one built on confidence, not fear. After the meeting, as the board members filtered out, a young analyst, maybe 25, lingered behind. She had a pen tucked behind her ear, her blazer slightly too big for her frame. "You make people like me believe we can lead too," she said. I paused. Not out of disbelief, but out of something like recognition. I knew what it felt like to need that one person ahead of you, carving the path no one else had cleared. I thanked her and meant it. As I walked down the hall, past the rows of offices and open workspaces, I felt no impulse to look back. Maybe legacy isn't what you inherit. Maybe it's what you refuse to repeat. Sometimes walking away isn't a loss. It's the first real win. I didn't get justice in the way I imagined, with headlines and vindication. What I got was clarity, distance, and the ability to start again without carrying someone else's mess on my back. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Being good at fixing everything doesn't mean you're meant to keep fixing everyone, especially not those who only remember you when it's convenient. Your worth isn't proven by what you inherit or how long you stay silent. It's in the lines you're willing to draw and the ones you're brave enough not to cross again. Now, I'm curious. What about you? Have you ever had to choose peace over legacy? Have you ever been expected to clean up what someone else broke? Tell me in the comments, drop a 1 if this story hit close to home. Let me know where you're watching from, or even why this story didn't sit right with you. I want to hear it all. And if you're still here, if this story moved you or made you think differently, please hit that subscribe button. There are more voices like mine, stories of courage, of letting go, of starting over, that deserve to be heard. Because sometimes, the most powerful legacy you can leave is knowing when to let it all burn. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.